Now, for Sunday's section of the lesson, it says, read Philippians 4, verse 6, which says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Now we have to look at the into the story section of the lesson. Into the story. Now there was a certain man from Ramathaim. He had two wives, one called Hannah and the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. Year after year, this man went up from his town to worship and sacrifice to the Lord Almighty at Shiloh. Whenever the day came for Elkanah to sacrifice, he would give portions of meat to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. But to Anna he gave a double portion because he loved her, and the Lord had closed her womb. Once they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh, Hannah stood up. Now Eli the priest was sitting on a chair by the doorpost of the Lord's temple. In her deep anguish, Anna prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. And she made a vow, saying, Lord Almighty, if you will only look upon your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. As she kept on praying to the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Anna was praying in her heart, and her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, how long are you going to stay drunk? Put away your wine. Not so, my lord, Anna replied. I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I have been praying here out of my great anguish and grief. Eli answered, go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him. She said, may your servant find favor in your eyes. Then she went on her way and ate something, and her face was no longer downcast. Early the next morning they arose and worshipped before the Lord, and then went back to their home at Ramah. Elkanah made love to his wife Anna, and the Lord remembered her. So in the course of time, Anna became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, saying, because I asked the Lord for him. And this is taken from 1 Samuel 1, verses 1 to 5, and verses 9 to 20. Into the story, we see why Hannah experienced intense grief. She had birthed no children of her own, yet her husband's other wife, Peninnah, had birthed lots of children. This wounded her and filled her with sorrow. So for the next section, we have to go to the out of the story. So let's jump back to that. Out of the story, why did Anna want a child so badly? What similarities exist between the covenant that Anna makes with God concerning Samuel and the covenant Samson had with God? Remember last week's lesson? Why did Eli think Anna was drunk when he found her in the temple? If a priest or pastor today were to find someone much like Anna in their church or temple, do you think that they would have treated her the same way Eli did? Why or why not? In what ways does this story demonstrate the grace of Jesus Christ and the power of prayer? Finally, read through the story again and write down some of the most important points and the parts that you think mean the most to you. So let's go back now. In the out of the story section that we just read, you were asked why Anna wanted a child. It wasn't just because Peninnah had children, although that was a part of it. She wanted something to love, and although she had the Lord and her husband, she ached for a child, and God granted her one. Go to a concordance and look up the words pray and prayer and find some other verses about prayers that were answered. What can we learn from these stories of answered prayer?